Oh, hello. Let's read another chapter. Things were getting steamy where we last left off. Let's see where it goes from here. In chapter 4. When Nick woke in the morning, it was afternoon. He couldn't remember what time he had finally gone to bed, but it had to have been closer to sun up than sundown. His phone was blowing up with messages, all of which came from YouTube. Apparently, his collaboration video with Tom and Daisy were live. He was already up 200 followers, and his latest video had almost 10,000 views. Nick estimated that kind of view count would generate somewhere between $15 or $20. That was well over minimum wage, especially considering that it would generate money even as he slept. The door burst open and Teddy came in bearing his phone. "Have you been on your account yet today?" Nick nodded, smiling. "It's looking like we might actually make rent next month. Teddy began to laugh, and Nick found himself joining him. It was the kind of laugh that comes on when danger is averted, when one can finally let out stress that has bottled up inside. The laughter had a crazed edge to it, and when they took note of that, they laughed even more. "I can't believe we did it," said Nick finally. "For real." Teddy ran his hand through his tousled hair. "I could feel myself slipping into panic mode." "You were right. I had to do that collaboration with my cousin." "You think?" said Teddy. Nick went into his phone and began reading the latest YouTube comments. They were fairly all positive. The new viewers praising and encouraging him. It felt good. Every comment lifting his spirit. I think I added an A to that sentence that shouldn't be there, and I just caught it now for the first time. Anyway, it felt good, every comment lifting his spirit. The motivation it created had him wanting to make a video right then and there. Nick's phone screen cut away from YouTube as he received an incoming phone call. The name on the screen read Daisy's Tom. Nick went to answer, but hesitated. He tried to think why Tom might be calling him. They had ended the night on well enough terms, Tom hinting at whether or not Nick noticed him cheating. Nick playing the fool and pretending to have noticed nothing. With that, the issue had been dropped. Nick pressed the green answer button and lifted it to his ear. "Hello?" When Tom spoke, it sounded urgent, yet barely more than a whisper. "Have you seen the news?" "No, I just woke up," said Nick. "They're trying to slander me, making crazy claims that I cheated on my wife." Nick suppressed the notion that it wasn't so much slander if it was the truth. "Oh?" "Daisy is going nuts," Tom went on. "She's screaming at me and throwing things. She even broke one of my hockey trophies." "Is she gonna be okay?" asked Nick. "I don't know. She won't let me talk to her." He paused, his voice growing even quieter. "Someone was spying on us. They even mentioned you by name as Daisy's cousin." Nick felt a pang of guilt, as though he had just been caught doing something bad, as though he were the one who had been cheating. "Well, that sucks," he said when no other response came to mind. "You need to get over here," said Tom. "What?" "Daisy won't listen to me, and someone needs to talk some sense into her." Nick heard a loud bang in the background. He wondered if it wasn't Daisy throwing things. "If you can't calm her down, I don't know what's going to happen," Tom went on. Nick pulled the phone away and closed his eyes, taking a deep breath as he did so. The last thing he wanted to do was dive into the middle of a marital fight between his cousin and her husband. "She might hurt herself," said Tom. "Damn it," Nick said away from the phone, then turned back. "Okay, I'm on my way." Nick hung up before Tom could respond. He was done listening to the guy's voice and didn't want to hear any more about his fabricated story of innocence. "What was that about?" asked Teddy. "I think your girlfriend Jordan last night was a journalist." "What?" said Teddy. "She write an article about how awesome I am?" Nick didn't smile. He could feel the weight of his situation bearing down on his shoulders and dreaded what he was about to walk into. "She caught Tom cheating last night and put it online." "Oh, well, that sucks to suck, Tom," said Teddy. This made Nick smirk, if only for a second. "Yeah, now we have to go over there and sort things out." "What do you mean, we?" asked Teddy. What do you mean, we?" said Nick. "I'm not going alone." Teddy shrugged. "Well, you're not going with me. You're the one who brought Jordan into our group. It's not my cheating cousin." Nick closed his eyes and exhaled, the sound coming out louder than he meant. "Come on, man. Don't make me do this by myself." "It'll be like pulling off a Band-Aid," said Teddy. "Get in, handle the situation, get out. And if Tom decides to break me in half?" "I've got a video to edit," said Teddy. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his car keys. "Don't worry about gas." Nick caught the keys with one hand and debated throwing them back. "You know, you weren't this hesitant when we were going over there to make a collaboration video with them." "Good luck," was all Teddy said. Then he turned and went into his room. In the car, Nick didn't bother to turn on the radio. He wasn't in the mood for music, and the silence gave him time to think. He could be honest with himself at that moment, could acknowledge the way he felt, without judgment from others. He feared both Daisy and Tom's reaction, and didn't want to be anywhere near this fight. He felt angry that Tom would allow this situation to happen in the first place, and he felt uncomfortable that he had to be Daisy's voice of reason. He didn't even know her that well. Sure, they were cousins, but for as long as Nick could remember, she had always lived in California. Other than once or twice a year on holidays, they never saw one another, and even then, most of their attention was pulled towards the rest of the family. As the landscape changed and the buildings became dirty, Nick thought of his cousin's marriage. Is it on the line? If I don't negotiate well enough, would it lead to their divorce? He had to distract himself, to think of anything else, or his anxiety might overwhelm him. What had their Lyft driver called this place? Skid Row? He tried to watch the road, but the tents kept drawing his eyes. The people on the sidewalk stared back at him with a mixture of despair and boredom. The putrid smell seeped into the cabin. Nick swallowed hard, deciding to breathe only through his mouth until he got through. Even with all of this going on around him, Nick wondered if Daisy would leave Tom when he got there. Would Tom strike her? Was he that kind of guy? He had cheated, which proved he only thought about himself. Why not hit a woman if she tried to leave him? Would Nick be forced to step in and fight? Did he have that in him? Nick tried again to focus on Skid Row, the disparity of the people, the want for better infrastructure. It might have been enough on a normal day, but at that moment, his mind would not allow it. As the streets became clear and the smell left the cabin, Nick could feel his heart rate increasing. There was less distance to travel, less time before he had to face his cousin. By the time Nick pulled into their driveway, he thought he might throw up. The first thing he saw after parking was that one of the front windows had been broken. The broken shards of glass were lying in the bushes in the driveway. Nick could hear a female voice, Daisy, yelling through the broken window. Though he couldn't make out the words, he approached the house slowly, dragging every step. This was interrupted only when the shouting stopped and the front door flew open. Tom came charging out a moment later with a huge smile on his face. "Nick, my man," he continued, closing and wrapping Nick in a hug. In Nick's ear, he whispered, "You have to tell Daisy that you were with me all last night and that I never so much as talked to another woman." Before Nick could respond, Tom leaned back and held him at arm's length, with that plastered-on smile. "What a surprise of you to come visit us." Nick noticed Daisy then. She stood at the front door, her arms crossed and her foot tapping. "Babe," Tom called. "Let's have tea with your cousin. He drove all the way across town just to see us." Daisy turned and walked into the house. Both Tom and Nick followed, both sticking close to one another. The house was a wreck inside. Nick realized the broken window was the least of the damage. One of Tom's trophies stuck out of the wall near the front door. Not far beyond that, the cabin where they kept their bottles of alcohol sat wide open, the bottles smashed nearby. Even the TV leaned at an odd angle, two large dented cracks on the screen. "I hope you don't mind," said Daisy. "We only have green tea." Her voice made Nick jump as he realized she was standing in the kitchen behind him. "Green tea is fine," said Nick. "So," said Tom, "did you like how the collaboration video turned out?" Nick both felt and heard broken glass under his foot and looked down to see a broken picture frame. He carefully lifted his foot and took a step back. "Yeah," he said, "it really gave my channel a boost." "That's what family's for," said Ted, "helping each other out." "There's only enough tea for the two of us," said Daisy, "Nick and I." Tom pressed his lips tight and nodded. "That's fine, I'll just drink ice water." Nick risked another glance around the room. Someone had smeared something that looked like barbecue sauce all over the counter. All of the glasses were smashed on the kitchen floor as well. "I was looking at your sub count, Nick," said Tom. "I think we can up the numbers by 20% within the week." Nick couldn't help but pick up the undertone in his voice. "You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours." He was trying to seal his loyalty. "You think?" asked Nick. "Oh yeah," said Tom. "Even more if we wanted to double down." "Or," said Daisy, "you could collaborate with my channel all you want. Did you know that I have 45,000 more subscribers than my husband?" "Oh," said Nick, wanting nothing more than to back away from both of them. "Something that I'm very proud of," Tom cut in. "But wouldn't you think my fan base would fit a lot better with Nick's niche? If he wants a bunch of hussies, sure," said Daisy, "but that's less sustainable in the long run. Better to go for higher quality subscribers." "My fans aren't hussies," said Tom. "Oh? You could have fooled me. I mean, that's not what the news headlines say." Nick felt something in his throat and had the strong urge to clear it. He hesitated to make any noise, however, and chose to hold it in. Tom threw up his hands. "That article is fake news, from a tabloid with the same credibility of a crook." "Right," said Daisy, "because you're so important that they feel the need to take you down. They're part of the mainstream, darling. They want to make us all look bad so they can discredit YouTube. And apparently they've decided to start with you," said Daisy. "They've been doing this ever since YouTube started stealing eyes from television." The pot on the stove began to scream, and Nick felt his entire body clench. He hadn't even realized Daisy began heating water. So many people use Keurigs that he had forgotten how loud a teapot could be. Daisy pulled the pot off the electric burner before bending down to scoop up 2 mugs off the floor. She then filled them with the hot water and put in the tea bags before walking one over to Nick. "Give it a minute," she said. "It's hot." "Thanks," said Nick, taking it. The mug was missing a handle that had very recently been snapped off. There were chips in a few other places too, but it seemed to be holding the tea just fine. Nick held it with 2 hands just in case. "How was your night?" asked Daisy. Tom cleared his throat. "It was pretty average, honey." Daisy glared at him. "I wasn't talking to you." Nick watched this as he took a long sip of tea. It tasted more bitter than he'd liked, but any distraction at the moment felt better than nothing. "Nick," Daisy prodded when he didn't speak up. "Last night," he said. "Oh, it was okay." "Just okay? You went out on the town with a YouTube famous star and didn't find anything special about it?" "We kept it low key," said Tom. Daisy didn't acknowledge him, instead keeping her eye on Nick. "It was pretty fun," said Nick, his eyes darting back and forth between the two. "There was this really cool rooftop bar I liked." "You didn't go clubbing? That's odd. It's one of my husband's favorite things to do," said Daisy. Nick swallowed hard. "Oh, yeah. We went to this club. I can't remember the name, but it was a nice place." "Were there any girls at this club?" Nick could feel himself shrinking, holding the coffee cup in front of his face like a shield. "It was pretty packed, yeah," said Nick. "And did my husband cheat on me with any of these girls?" Nick almost choked on his tea. There it was, the question he dreaded. He would now have to choose whether to betray Daisy or Tom, with their entire marriage hanging in the balance. "Daisy," said Tom. "Well," Daisy went on, "that's what everyone on the internet's telling me. As you were there, I can imagine you wouldn't have missed it." "As you were there, I can't imagine you would have missed it." Nick started. "He didn't see anything because nothing happened," Tom cut in. "I believe my cousin was going to say something," said Daisy. If Nick had any courage at all, he could feel it draining away under their glare. He needed backup, any form of help he could get. Had Teddy been there? But no, he was alone. Nick stammered, "didn't see anything." Tom instantly sank back in relief, while Daisy didn't move. Nick forced a smile, though he felt as though a dark cloud had moved over him. He was disappointed in himself. The betrayal to his cousin was no longer hypothetical. It was real, and he had done it. The worst part was that it covered for Tom, the true betrayer. Nick took the mug away from his face. He was no longer thirsty. In fact, he felt a little sick. "Okay," said Daisy, breaking the silence that had fallen over the room. "I apologize. I guess the tabloids got the best of me." "It's okay, babe. They get the best of a lot of people," said Tom. Daisy turned and walked away, disappearing down the hallway on the way to her room. She looked so sad, defeated even. Nick couldn't help but feel that he had done that to her. "Well," said Tom, a genuine joy spreading across his face, "you up for another collaboration?" "Not today," said Nick, then walked out of the house. Tom didn't follow, and he felt thankful. He didn't want to look at the guy. He couldn't get out of there fast enough. The drive home did little to lift his poor spirits. Driving through Skid Row, he debated parking the car and getting out to sit with the forlorn people all around. Maybe it would feel good to be with people who felt similar. Nick resisted the urge. got home 10 minutes later. How'd it go? Asked Teddy when he walked through the front door. About as bad as you could have imagined, said Nick. Teddy laughed. Glad I wasn't there. Nick couldn't help but feel annoyed at Teddy's overly cheerful mood. He had skipped the drama, leaving only Nick to pay the price. Nick fell back on the couch and closed his eyes. It was barely the afternoon, but he already felt like he could take a nap. Something soft hit him in the chest. He brought his hand up to find a letter. Dude came by about an hour ago and dropped that off. Nick opened his eyes to see Teddy shaking his head. He said he was the neighbor's assistant. Nick pulled the letter from his chest to observe. The letter itself was on gold paper. The letters in black with a ribbon tied around it. Teddy had already opened it, so Nick let the card slide out into his hand. More gold paper and black lettering were on the card in a matching theme. In the largest letters of all, above all the others, was the word cross. The card was an invite for Nick all the way to YouTube. Let me start that one over. The card was an invite for Nick all the way to a YouTube creators party. The address, one number off from his own. The date was that day. Are we going? Asked Teddy. Nick looked up. Now you want to go with me when I'm invited somewhere? Don't even play with me, said Teddy. Nick thought about his mood, how he had been riding so high that morning, only to be brought down. It was a miserable feeling, one that he felt beyond ready to get rid of. Hell yeah, we're going. It says, hell yeah, we're going. And that concludes chapter 4. Nick betrayed his cousin. He did dirty. I don't know. What do you do there? He should have said he wanted nothing to do with anything. Now he's in a pickle. Ruh-roh. And this letter to the neighbor's party. What's that about? Alright. Until next time.